Sam Mason from Texas Bond Productions and the film Normal Terror, and you're listening to The Movie Raid.
It's time for the movie raid. Tonight's victim is actor special effects Sam Mason. That's currently doing Normal Terror amongst other films. Hello.
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Trying to survive. So what have we been up to lately? I know you got a bunch of stuff going on throughout the month. What are you allowed to talk about right now?
Currently, I'm allowed to talk about all but one film right now that I'm working on. Pushing right now is going to be Normal Terror, which is my psychological horror film. We're calling it a new style gore film. And then we also have Guy Grundy and Maverick Von Hoff. So Normal Terror is a true push to 80s, original icon 80s horror film. My perspective and how I view this is something a little bit different. You know, while I do love the icons, you know, being a filmmaker myself, I've taken some from what these guys have brought to the industry, and I respect absolutely every one of them for what their films have become. But I think that we've lost the originality in Hollywood, putting films out that are, you know, either reboots or remakes. So I came up with something a little bit different, and it's from the serial killer's point of view before he's caught. So we don't have any of the miscellaneous bullshit involved to drive the story. We don't have the cops investigating. We don't have anybody chasing them. We don't get a whole lot of backstory on the victims or follow-up. Nobody's currently looking for them. This is about a single father doing his best to take care of his son, struggling to get by like a lot of people nowadays. I think that's something almost everybody can relate to nowadays. But the magic happens after he puts his son to bed, and that's when man becomes a monster. He abducts, searches, and kills his victims for no apparent reason. Each abduction is different, and each murder is different. So there's nothing, you know, he's a very intelligent character and very methodical in how he does what he can to prevent the cops from relating all of these crimes that he's committed. From the serial killer's point of view before he's caught, and all the research I did on serial killers, you know, they're your average everyday Joe. You know, they're very charismatic, they're very personable people, they have normal lives, and then they also do these very horrific things to people. So I'm kind of following that setting on that and making it a little more true to life than anything else that's come out.
Predictability. If people were not so accepted to predictability on a lot of these films, like Hollywood films and stuff like that, do you think this is going to be a different effect that they've never experienced before? Or do you think this is kind of, it should be like within the balance to actually keep it there, even though it's not exactly exciting? But do you think that's kind of like almost a piece that needs to be there, or do you think it should be removed?
You know, the fact of the matter is, you know, is Hollywood's in the filmmaking business to make money, you know, and they have an ABC box of what makes movies, you know, but we don't have a whole lot of originality. You know, the last 5 big films that were original was, you know, started with the Blair Witch, started the whole found footage genre, subgenre, Paranormal Activity, which brought in the jump scares. You had Saw, which became a franchise in itself, but it started out as a true indie film, you know, and it was a very methodical story. It was a very psychologically, you know, based story, you know, and how they went about that. And then you have, you know, movies that are a little more recent, like Us, by Mr. Peoples, that with Jordan Peele, that, you know, that are bringing it from a completely different perspective. So you finally have a little bit of more originality, but there's not a whole lot of it out there. So what I'm trying to do is bring an original story and being original in itself, and, you know, going back to all practical effects. There is no visual effects whatsoever done with this film, other than, you know, our camera angles, our lighting, and, you know, and our actors truly giving a performance in it. You know, they're not looking at tennis balls; they're looking at, you know, at true horror in the face. You know, as an up-and-coming filmmaker, I think the most difficult thing right now is getting into a position where you earn that reputation and respect of getting things done on set. And I think I'm creating that for myself currently with all the different projects that I'm working on. I recently started expanding out and really pushing my special effects work, just jumping out there and putting your stuff out there and letting people see what you're capable of, interacting with people, and, you know, and seeing the love that, you know, that you're getting. You know, I really do appreciate, you know, everybody taking time to check out our work, and, you know, hopefully we can bring them something that, you know, is going to hopefully become an icon in itself. You know, you have Terrifier with Art the Clown, who's become pretty iconic in himself. David Howard Thornton's rendition of Art the Clown is, you know, quite the talk of the town lately, especially since they're filming Terrifier 2 right now.
And having to achieve difference is something almost a taboo word, because having to make a difference is incredibly hard, because of course everybody wants to succeed in a specific level. But having these particular projects, at least for the the starter out of the bunch that you're currently doing, would you actually use these as your actual vehicle to achieve difference in filmmaking in general, or anything else related to it?
I do a lot of different things. I'm a producer, I'm an actor, primarily character actor under method style. I get caught up in my parts, but I also like to push myself in what I can and accomplish, not only with my acting, but, my directing, my visual style. I think because I grew up with Children of the Corn and Friday the 13th and, Hellraiser being my favorite, I think the visual stunningness and cinematography, your lighting, your actors, I think it all makes a difference in creating that world that you just want to escape to. It scares you to death, but it also, it draws you in. And I'm not sure if we really understand why it draws us in, but we have a blast doing what we do, and I'm just hoping to make a decent living for myself and my son. I am a single father, so Normal Terror is partly based on my real life experiences with my son and raising a teenage kid. So just trying to create chase our dreams and create a life for him that makes things a little bit easier as we go along. As we talked about before the show. Today's world is a little bit different than when we grew up. It's a lot harder out there today. Trying to give him a best foot forward.
Oh yeah, the world itself is changing every year. Lots of events changing that's going on, and much more real personal issues with people in general. The fact is that when filmmaking, and especially when you do have a family, having to rely on something like this, how do you try to keep the mentality of things, trying to, even though you have a lot of projects going, but you also have a family to support at the same time, having to get that added income? I mean, do you think support needs to be much bigger than what it is, not just to rely on just a couple things that you already know that you need support from?
I think if you ask any indie filmmaker, the hardest thing to come up with is your budget. I'm not necessarily saying that it takes money to make a great project, but there are things that you have to buy for a production. I have to buy my materials for my special effects. You got to have good lighting. You got to have good cinematography. You got to have good sound equipment. And you got to have a good editor. You got to have a lot of different aspects going to filmmaking in order to support yourself and still chase your dreams. You find a way. You have to be very ingenuitive. I'm not getting paid a whole lot at this point. In some projects, I'm not getting paid at all yet. With the hopes that my belief in the project and creating something that's truly different and stunning and visually appealing, along with a story that captivates people, is what's going to get it out there. But I think you have to be very ingenuitive. You have to do whatever it takes to push yourself, push your product, push your brand, and do what it takes to get out there and and do it. Everybody says that they want to do it, but not everybody wants to put in the work. There's times where where I don't eat, so that my son can. Things are tough at times, especially financially. I live in California, just outside of LA. Expensive to live here and to survive here. So it's not always the easiest thing to do, but we find a way to make things happen. Pushing our dreams, keep pursuing, and finding new ways to make money without putting my ass out on Hollywood Boulevard for $20 a hit.
Do you think sometimes that, even though it can be very personal, like you're going through so much stuff emotional-wise, trying to get all these projects going, trying to, especially if you have a family, or other means at the same time, do you think sometimes you can't be personal, sometimes it's going to be more of a conflict trying to get the work out there, or do you think it might actually be more of a confliction getting your vision out there, even though you have this also on top of your shoulders?
It's very difficult at times. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I just celebrated 11 years of sobriety, January 17th. So I struggle with those demons. Also battled with anxiety and depression, majority of my life. Those things definitely add in. I think the biggest thing for me is having a support system. Having people around you that believe in your work, that believe in what you're doing and how you're doing it. I think is the biggest thing. Is when you don't believe in yourself, having someone that believes in you. And I'm very grateful that I have a group of people around me that when I don't believe in myself, they step up and say, hey, you know what you're doing is brilliant, it's great, and it's going to make a difference. So just keep going, you got to struggle through it, believe in making it and pushing forward no matter what. Don't give up just because things are difficult. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
And having that positive aspect, it seems like it's a hit and miss, especially in filmmaking as well. When you're going through all these things outside of the film that you're trying to progress, and that the positive aspect things, that positive feeling is a hit and miss when you're trying to do it, because when you don't have any support and you're not really trying to put your own support out there, you gotta have that kind of element for yourself in order for you to continue to do what you do. Because if you don't have any kind of a little bit of support, not just from yourself or at least the people that you're around you, you probably won't succeed as much as you think you would, even though you may be very skillful at directing or let's say special effects or anything like that. But the thing is, if you're not fully confident in yourself, you might need to go find that additional support, whatever works for you.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that a lot of people want the benefits without putting in the work. I think we come from a society that's that's ADHD based, and our attention spans, because we have infinite information at our fingertips. A lot of people aren't willing to do the work and have the drive to make themselves successful at what they do. So I think it's really important to really push, if this is something that you want to do, if you want to be a filmmaker, if you want to be an actor, if you want to be a producer or director or special effects icon or working in that field, I think it's really important that you put yourself out there and you constantly strive for what you're trying to achieve. There's going to be times where you're going to struggle. It's not always going to be easy. However, as long as you continue to work for it, you will eventually achieve that. It's not going to land in your lap. You have to bust your ass and make it happen for yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Oh, definitely. And sometimes, even though you go through these struggles, but sometimes you have to be alone. Sometimes you have to have that one vision for yourself so that you can focus. Sometimes you can visualize what path you're actually going. You have to be alone sometimes. You can't just be surrounded entirely by everybody as far as in terms of support, because you gotta focus where you're heading first before you can embrace with what you love.
Oh, absolutely. I developed the story of Normal Terror over 12 years, 8 of which I was on the road as a truck driver, spending a lot of time by myself. So when I sat down to actually write Normal Terror, I literally had it written in a month. The first draft was written in less than 30 days. And that was because I had worked on the story and I had developed the story, and I had, figured out how I was going to shoot it and how I wanted, the visuals to come across, and being able to put that in a written form so that somebody else could look at it and say, I think we've got something here. I had to do it myself, but again, going back to what I said before, I had to do the work. Couldn't just, say, okay, this is my synopsis, this is what I want done, let's go. What do you think? I was very naive when I first started this project 2 years ago, and thinking that because I had a new, original, great idea, and I'm very passionate about it, that people were going to be throwing money at it. I was very naive in that aspect. While I knew what to expect on the production side of things, I didn't know what to expect on the business side of things. And I think that's something that that needs to people need to think about. The fact that there's two sides of the industry. You have what happens on production side, and you have what happens on the business side. Your contracts and the things that you need in order to get to the financing, get people to believe that you have your shit together enough to be willing to take a risk on. The fact of the matter is, financing a film is a very risky business. There's a lot of films that have millions of dollars on that sit on the shelf and never really get their money back for it. It's very important you have all your ducks in a row, which is a very hard lesson I've had to learn over the last 2 years.
Oh, without a doubt, man. Go and plug in any websites or anything that we can expect from Normal Terror or any other projects that might be releasing this year.
We have Maverick and Grundy, which I've talked about a little bit. We have Normal Terror. The Butcher is currently out and on, I believe it's Amazon Prime. You can reach me on Facebook. You can reach me on Instagram. You can reach me on Twitter. If you do a Google search for Sam Mason or Sam I Am Mason or Normal Terror or my production company, Sacrificial Pond Productions, we're literally the first 100,000 lists that come up on any of those things. So any of those sources I can be reached at. You can find me on IMDb. You can see a lot of how we've put our special effects together on our Instagram. I don't keep a lot of that stuff a secret because it's one of the reasons things that we've got in the fan base that we have is that I'm able to show how we do a lot of the things that we do, so that, you know, people look at it and say, wow, okay, I always wondered how they did that.
There you have it, everybody. That is actor, director, special effects, Sam Mason.
The honor is on your show, brother. I appreciate you having me, man.